I got home from work one day, and my wife was sitting on the floor in the guest room, and she wouldn't look up at me. And I'd been in this situation, and I'd sort of learned to read her body language, and I knew there was something that was wrong. So I asked her, and finally, after a few minutes, I got it out of her, and she said, I've been thinking about what I'm going to do with the Vespa key. I didn't know what she was talking about. I mean, we have a Vespa, but what did she mean? And she said, in order to get to the Golden Gate Bridge, I'm going to take the Vespa. And when I jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, I don't know what I'm going to do with the Vespa key. Should I bring it? Because if they don't find my body, you lose the key. But if I leave it on the scooter, then someone might take it. So, tell me, what am I supposed to do with the Vespa key? Now, I'd been terrified that my wife might act upon her suicidal impulses. I hid her medication. I changed the hiding place every few days. But I didn't know how I was supposed to hide the Golden Gate Bridge from her. So my wife, Julia, has bipolar disorder. We didn't know this when we met at age 18 and fell in love. We didn't know it until 9 years later. We've been married for 3. We've been together since our first week of college. And she started this new job, and the stress, which should have been no problem, became something completely out of control. And she had trouble sleeping. She stopped sleeping. She wasn't interested in food. And then she started having delusions and talking about God and the devil and about how she was the devil and had to protect me. And so I took her to the hospital, and after about 6 hours of waiting around, they admitted her to the psych ward. I'd never been inside a psych ward before, and I had certainly never imagined that I would visit my wife there every day during visiting hours from 7 to 8:30 at night. And the doctors, they didn't know what was wrong. All they would say was, she is acutely psychotic. And to hear those words described about your spouse just left me feeling dead and hollow. And I was panicked. I had no idea what to do, so I did everything that I possibly could. I spent all day reading books and articles and calling doctors for second opinions and researching other hospitals and everything. And then when I'd visit her, even though she was often hysterical and sometimes didn't even want to see me, I thought that maybe I could say the right thing to her that would fix it all, make it all go away, or I could hold her close enough and that it would all just end. One day before my nightly visit, I needed a break, so I went surfing. But I wasn't in the mood to surf, I just needed to be in the ocean. And I paddled out way past the waves, and I was just sitting out there by myself on my board in what felt like the open ocean, and I just cried for a really long time. And I thought, is she going to get better? Is this what life is going to be like for us? Can I do this? Because I didn't know this was coming when I was 18. And as I'm sitting there, you got to believe me, this actually happened. 2 dolphins swam right at me. And they came up and I heard poof, and they were right next to me. They swam under, swam by. And I watched them swim away, and I thought of how vast and majestic and terrifying the ocean is. And I saw these 2 dolphins together, and I knew they can do it. I can do it. If they can be together, I can be together. And I was going to stand by my wife no matter what. So this happened about 3 years ago. It was 3 years ago. I was sitting on my surfboard in the ocean with my wife in the psych ward, and I said, no matter what. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't realize no matter what meant 23 days in the psych ward. And when they discharged her, she was actually still a little psychotic. When I picked her up, I was all excited, and she pulled me in close and whispered, this is a mistake. I need to be in here forever. And I smiled and I said, you're coming home. And I didn't know that after the psychosis faded, she was going to be so lost in depression. She couldn't work. She hardly talked. All she was really interested in was suicide. And we just had to wait. The doctors were experimenting with all these different drugs. Take this one away, add this one, change the amount. And we just had to wait until they worked and hope that Julia would be patient enough to wait until that day came. And it took us 9 months to get there. 9 grueling, anxiety-plagued, lonely months. But eventually, they found the right meds. And it disappeared. It was like it had never happened. No matter what, actually turned out to be a second hospitalization. This one happened only 6 months ago. Turned out to be longer than the first one. And I thought, oh, I'm a pro at this point. I know what to do. I'm fine. But the difference is we had a 5-month-old son at home. So now I had a wife in the hospital, this baby boy, who I had to love and protect. And it was 10 times harder. Here I was thinking it was going to be easier. People sometimes ask me when I talk about mental illness, and they say, I would have left. There's too much uncertainty, too much pressure, too much fear. Why did you stay? And I've thought about that a lot, and I think I have 2 answers. First off is the specifics. I love my wife. I love her a lot. I met her when I was a kid. We grew up together. When you see someone you love suffer, you're there. And to the people who said, I might have left, I say, suffering can look like a lot of different things, and it's maybe scary from the outside, but once you're there, sitting in that waiting room with your hand pressed up against the glass, and her hand on the other side, and her eyes wild and unhinged, you don't know who you are until you're there. You don't know how you're going to act until you're there. You might find something there that you didn't even know existed. But I think the second reason I stuck around is because of this commitment to the idea of commitment itself. To give you an analogy, when I was in 5th grade, I lived overseas in a country where there was no drinking age. And some of my friends, when we were 10, started to go to bars. And I said, that's scary. I'm never going to do that. That was 20 years ago, and I never drank alcohol. And the same thing, when I got married at 24, I said, I'm here till death do us part, sickness and in health. And when you're 24 and you think you're invincible, you don't know what that means. And it's until the health evaporates. That's when you really get tested. That's when the vow really counts. Commitment is such a simple, but I think ancient piece of wisdom to stand by who you are, who you love. And to be honest, I think in our changing landscape, it almost feels novel because we're getting so used to instant gratification and immediate connection. But I sometimes look at all of our intense connection as more just like anonymous connection. We interact. That's what they call it on Twitter, interactions. But I don't know if we're really engaging. If someone tweets at me, I don't even have to reply. I can just ignore it. How many times have I been in a text conversation where my friend is saying something and I just don't respond for hours, And on the flip side, as consumers, we can get anything we want. We have options for everything. We have user reviews and suggestions based on your previous order that points you towards the perfect thing. And guess what? If it's not perfect, you can return it and find something else that feels more perfect. And because of that, commitment feels like a new idea. It's about standing by life's imperfections, no matter what. The most gracious and happy and wise person I know is a Benedictine monk who's been a monk for 50 years, and he's living his life according to a book that was written 1,500 years ago. This guy's my role model, When my wife was hospitalized, I've never felt so scared in my whole life. When she was suicidal, I've never felt so much anxiety. When she was heavily medicated, I've never felt so alone. But when she got better, when she came out of that darkness, and we stood there together, blinking in the sunlight, and realizing we made it, and we made it together, and in fact, we made it because of each other. I mean, that's the greatest feeling you can have in life. Nothing compares. The victory only tasted sweet because of how hard it was to achieve. So commitment, it's really shown me the greatest gift and joy in life is in loving someone and being loved in return, no matter what. Thank you.